Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Merle Massey. I'm the coordinator of the Undergraduate Research Initiative here at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm in the Office of the Vice President Research, and we welcome you today. I sit on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis, and I give my respect to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and welcome our walking together into the future. Today we have a special lecture, our special guest. It's Dawn Warner, who's going to be talking to us about building your resume and your cover letter. A lot of you, so the way that we run our SURE program is that we try and run you through sort of the arc of what it looks like to be an undergraduate researcher and give you supports along the way. But we know that some of you are going to be finishing off your summers and heading into the work world and actually, putting together those resumes and those cover letters. You also might be putting together resumes and cover letters to get another research position. And so there's some thoughts around that as well. But in any case, all of us at some point enter the work world. And that's why we've asked Dawn to come and chat with us about resume and cover letters. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dawn.
Great. Thanks, Meryl. And thanks for all of you showing up. And like I was saying to Meryl, probably hearing, it's been a start to getting back into the world, but it's kind of exciting because I'm seeing a lot of employers. The job market's opening up. So many opportunities out there and conversations to be had. So exactly. The first step is to know how to do your resume and cover letter. So like Meryl said, I'm with Career Services. My role is an employer and community engagement coordinator. So what that means is I'm kind of that bridge between talking with employers and community leaders and helping understand what that transition looks like for students like yourself as you're transitioning from being a student status into going over to the world of work. So that's kind of where my role is. So definitely I'm going to walk you through this. I will go through, if questions, please put them into the chat and Meryl will either answer some of them or she'll pop in and we can go live. I'm very okay for being interrupted, or if you wish, we can have some time at the end for Q&A. So let's get started. So we're going to look over, like we said, resumes and cover letters, touch on that. But again, if there's any other questions that you have, please feel free to ask those as well. So for today's session, what we're going to be looking at, my hope is by the end of our time together, probably about 45-50 minutes, you're going to understand what we mean in terms of personal inventory. So looking at your skills, abilities, and all of that. Job postings, how to understand to read a job posting and how to do the research into the industry or company you're interested in, as well as to understand, okay, what is a resume exactly? And I know sometimes there's questions around what's a resume, what's a CV, as well as a cover letter. How do you actually write them? Do we need them? Resume headings and references, because as you'll see, there's different styles. If you've done a Google search, you can see there's a lot of information out there, as well as then some just overall general writing tips. So that's kind of at the end. I'm going to touch on a lot of that. And so this is where, if I haven't gone deep enough for you or answered your question, please make sure that you ask your question and I'll do my best to answer it. So now what I want you to do is just take a moment. And you see, we've got the scale from 1 to 10, and there's no zeros because everyone's got a benchmark, I'm sure. So what I want you to do is just take a little bit of thought in terms of what I just kind of shared about what we're going to talk and delve into in terms of resumes and cover letters, and just see where your number is on the scale of 0 to 10 and with respect to resumes and cover letter. Like, how comfortable and knowledgeable do you feel? And then kind of why did you choose that number? And what is it that you feel you want to know more so that the number could go up a notch or two at the end of this time? And so that's what I'd love for you to do. And if you want to put that into the chat, I'd be curious to kind of see, just as a benchmark, where everyone's comfort level is and confidence level is. And then we'll do this at the end as well, just to see if we move that needle a little bit upward to a notch. So I'll give everybody just a moment, and then Meryl, if you'd let me know just kind of like what you're seeing overall, what's coming into the chat, please.
I will absolutely watch.
Because it just helps, put your mind at, okay, have I gained knowledge? Have I knew? And maybe even reflect like, okay, I want to go deeper on that. I need to know more. So yeah, I think we've got a few.
46348. Ooh, Adrian could be teaching this. 3, 4.
Okay. Well, hopefully we can get some of those threes. You might get to jump up a little bit more. So we'll see how I do. That also gives us an indicator if I'm going in the right direction with you. So now what we're going to do is the first step. And now this is the nice part. If you don't have a resume, I always say this is actually kind of exciting and really good because you just have this clean slate so that it's fresh and you can kind of really do it, that foundation at a really healthy level. However, that's not means to say if you have one that you can't kind of go back and edit. And of course, because that's a lifetime of doing that. But it's just kind of, don't feel bad if you don't have one yet, because really where I want you to start, and we really do want you to begin, is taking stock, taking inventory of where you're at. Like, what are your skills, your superpowers, as I like to say, those gifts. And it's really, before you jump into like, what is the employer looking for? What do I need to have for that specific job? Before you get into that, because it can get really overwhelming, is really taking time to self-reflect and become self-aware so that you really understand, what are my skills? What are my abilities? What am I interested in? What kind of workplace culture would I thrive in and would set me up for success? What kind of leader would I like to work for? What kind of leader would be a good mentor? And all of that kind of stuff. And really start to ask yourself these questions before you get kind of confused by what's out there. Because it's really important, like Muriel and I were talking about, hybrid, remote, in person. We've had 2 years to kind of play an experiment for what our personal preferences may be. And the world of work is definitely going to be evolving over the next year to 5, 6, 10 years. So really wanting you to tap in to find out what your unique strengths are. What are you good at? What are you going to bring to that job? And I know sometimes this is the part we like to skip and we want to dive in, take that action. However, this step is really key, not only for just writing your resume, but it really, the more time you take to invest at this stage, it really helps with that interview stage. Because in all honesty, when you get to the interview stage, when they're asking you to share, what are your strengths? How do you fit this role? What are you good at? You are the expert on you. And if you haven't taken the time to delve in and really get to know you, it makes the interview a lot more challenging. Whereas if you do this step and you really, really take that time to do it, it honestly makes the interview that much easier, because there's no trick questions in an interview unless you haven't done this step. So that's why we really, really do spend and encourage you to spend a lot of time in this zone. And if you're not sure how to do it, we're definitely going to show you how we can get you some support and help at the end. I'll share some of that. So now that you've kind of stepped in and you've got a really good sense of who you are and where you're wanting to go, now it's kind of going in and finding those jobs, right? Because that's the part that we're wanting to do, is explore, how do I get paid? Where do I need to go? How do I grow my career? So this part, so now when you're pulling out a job posting, remember, I always say this is kind of like the treasure map. This is where you don't just read it once and say, okay, great, I got it. That's a job I'm interested in. And now you start to apply. The job posting has all the answers. It's the answer key to the company, to the position. Because remember, they wrote it with a candidate, with the need of what skill sets they're needing. So you need to really carefully read that job posting and look at what are those key items that they are really looking for. Because what you're going to find in a job posting, and when the job descriptions are written in an organization, they really take it from a very theoretical level where it's like, okay, if we could clone somebody and we had the ideal candidate, this is what they would look like. But there isn't anyone out there that fits all of the, from A to Z, exactly what they're asking for. So that's why you really just want to kind of read that posting and say, what are those key elements, those key skills, credentials that they're looking for? That's what you want to highlight. And you want to set that apart from the skill sets, that might be assets or above and beyond. And so this is what I mean, is going through that, reading that. And this is where the ideal candidate is a little bit different than what they're going to get. And so if there's a job posting that you see and you'd really like it, but you feel like you don't really meet the qualifications, that's okay. Honestly, there's no harm in applying for it. One, you're getting in front of their hiring manager. Two, you might fit that need. And what I always say too is, especially if it's a company that you don't know, especially like private sector, sometimes they can hire a junior position. There's always somebody that's getting promoted, retiring, moving on, whatever that happens. And if you apply, maybe you might not get that job, but there might be a job in-house that they're like, wow, I just saw this resume. Let's consider them for that file. And in private sector, they can do that. They don't have to post every position. So it's keeping that in mind too, that if there's a company you want to work for, definitely go for it. Don't hide away from that. Yeah, so job postings, spending time going through that is really, really key. So now that you've kind of done that dive into the job posting, you've seen it on whether it's Indeed or CareerLink or on a company's website, what you're wanting to do now before you start to write a resume is exploring the company. You want to go and research the company. You want to look at their website. You want to look at their social media. You want to look at, I always say, go to their news, their media pages, because that'll tell you current events, what's going on. Like, are they growing? Did they do layoffs? Was there a lawsuit? What is going on? This is where you want to kind of get you into the organization. Now, if it's a publicly traded company, there's a lot more information available, of course, because they have to have everything up for the shareholders. If it's a privately held company, your research is going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to go to their social media, maybe go in, check out LinkedIn. If there's employees on there, you can do a scan over their profiles, because sometimes they'll give a little bit more information into the company. They might have done blog posts or stuff like that. So this is really key, because what you're wanting to do is get into the mindset of the company to understand where's their challenges, what is their growth. So if they have an annual report and they've got their goals and strategic vision, you want to read those, because what this is going to do is help you when you go to write your cover letter and your resume, because then you can kind of, with knowing where they're needing you to go, what they're looking for, you can start to bring that language and communication into your resume and into your cover letter, so you can really customize it to that job. Because remember, every corporation for the most part has their own language. They have the words that they use and stuff. And so if you start researching that, then you can just tailor and do these little tweaks on your resume and cover letter that just makes those words, because they're familiar to them, pop off the page. Because when a recruiter looks at a resume, they look at it for like 6 seconds. The first pass. So this is why you're really wanting to grab their attention right away. And you want to understand that position. You want to understand that organization. And this is where, again, keeping in mind when you're applying for positions, it's quality versus quantity. I always say, if you want to apply for 300 jobs and it's for bragging rights, then go for it. Just send easy apply, easy done. However, if you're really wanting to get a job, you do have to take the time and put the quality into it. And it is, looking for a job is a full-time job. So keeping that in mind, and don't get frustrated, but doing this extra deep dive and tailor making your resume cover letter is really going to benefit you a lot. So now, in terms of the resume, depending on your experience, it's going to depend on which style and format of resume that you select. So we've got 3 different kinds. There's the chronology, the functional, and the combination. Now, the chronological one, what that one's going to really focus on is highlighting. It's going to have a section like around highlighting your qualifications, your skills, detailed work experience. This one is when you've had a lot of relevant work experience to the position that you're applying for, then your resume is really strong. You can really highlight what it is that you're needing to match that position and that organization. Now, functional, where that one would come in, is if you don't have as much experience, but you're trying to pivot from one career path to another. So what you're wanting to really do is hone us in is connecting the dots from your skills and abilities to connect them over. So you're going to have a summary of skill sets. You're going to have more around your specific qualifications, keeping in mind of how you connect yourself to the job that they're looking for. So it's really focusing on transferable skill sets. And this, keep in mind, this comes into like your volunteer experience. So your life experience, you can write into this, right? Like, so it doesn't all have to be work. It can be research, working on projects in the university. All of that comes into your skill set. And that's part of that self-awareness piece, is really diving in to what are those skills? How did I, achieve them? Where have I learned them? This is all important. So when you're coming to put this into the resume. The third one, and actually it is actually the most popular one, and then becoming definitely a lot more popular out there, is the combination one. And what the combination resume does for you, it basically takes the chronology one and the functional and brings them together. And so this is where you're going to have that summary of skills, which is great, because the summary of skills is, now the other thing is, it's relevant to the position. So it's not all your skills, you're amazing at so many things, but again, what you're going to want to do, because you know that job posting so well, you're going to take the relevant top skills that you have for that job posting, and that's what's going to go in there. And you're going to have 3 to 5 points. So that's what you're going to look at. And so this style really blends your work experience, your education experience, and your life experience into one resume. And that's why that resume choice is becoming definitely the more popular one out of the 3. Now, with respect to whatever you decide to choose, here's just a sample one. It's actually on our university career services site, and I'll put the link into the chat at the end. It's just one sample. We do have some guides and stuff as well that you can use. But what you're wanting to keep in mind is a couple of things. So you're going to want to make sure that it's presentable. And I know it's so much fun to put so much color and all these wonderful different styles out there. But unless you're going to apply for graphic design or you're an artist or something like that, you'll want to keep it basic because, again, keeping in mind that the recruiter or hiring manager, they're reading these resumes in like 6 seconds at the first glance. And from past experience, I can tell you, thousands I've looked at these, you can actually go through and look at the highlight and find those top credentials that you're looking for, which is usually education and relevant work experience. And they also then read in the line of an F. So if you think, because they've done the research and stuff that's shown how when you go in your summary skills at the top, they're going to read the first couple of points there, and then they're going to go down to the left-hand side of the resume. And so this is where you just have to make it solid so those words and language pop off the page, and being very succinct in how you write it. Like less is more. And it's, I think there is a quote I heard, I can't tell you who said it, but it was kind of like, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. And it stuck with me because that's just it, as you've probably gotten from university. They get you to tighten it down. And that's because then you have to become more succinct and you have to really put some time into it. So again, it is worth it. It takes more time and energy to do it, but you want to do that. The other thing is keeping your fonts universally acceptable. So the Calibri, the Times New Roman is okay. It's not one of the better ones. I would say Calibri or Arial. I think I'm saying it right. Or I'm thinking of the Little Mermaid, I think. So 11 or 12 point size, I would say around your 11 is good. That way you can get a little bit more on it on a 2-page, because I know sometimes it's tough. But again, depending on how much information, you can go up to a 12. You wouldn't go more than that. And you wouldn't want to go below an 11 because, again, you want to make sure that it's easy for people to read. Put your LinkedIn URL on there. You don't have to put your full address. That's gone because no one's going to send you a letter home. So you'd put your city. So you put like Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, or Sask, because you abbreviate it. You put your LinkedIn, you put your phone number at the top and your email. And that's all you're going to put at the top. So it is definitely shifted. You don't have to put the formal address anymore. That's gone. You don't need your postal code, that kind of stuff. Now you can play a little bit with the margins, like because of the more work experience that you have that's relevant to this opportunity. You might want to get it into the 2. And the reason why you want to kind of get into 2-1 is when the hiring manager is looking at it, they're more likely to look at 2. When there's more than 2, it becomes overwhelming, and they may put you into a different pile, which may never come back to that pile if they've had quality candidates in the other pile. So that's why you can play with the margins, make them a little more narrow. You want to play with the headings. Keep in mind that whatever you bold or you italicize, the I automatically goes there. So it's important to remember whatever you are bolding is something that's relevant to the recruiter or hiring manager to stand out. If you over bold and you over italicize, they won't be able to read the other information. So you want to remember that less is more and being very strategic in when and where you're using that. So now going into writing your resume statement. So with respect to like your summary of skills, and even when you're trying to describe like what you did at every company in your past work experience, it is important that you're not just writing that you did something like, I answered phones. You don't want to make it just about the task. So this is where we've got this little bit of a tool, is you want to put an action word, and then you want to kind of put the skill or what you did, and then you want to quantify or qualify it. So demonstrating how and what you did. So for an example, what you could put some Oh my goodness, where did my notes go? Sorry. So for an example, it could be, I maintained the customer service database for 1,000 employees in an office of 200 people. So what it's doing is you're putting some measurement around it so they have a sense of like what depth and level of expertise you had within that role. So it's just really supporting you a lot more. And this can happen even in your customer service jobs. Like if you're, let's say, McDonald's, I was a team lead. So there, I managed and trained a team of 6 people per shift, and I did their scheduling as well. I was helping serve 25 customers per hour on an average daily basis. So that right away paints a picture for me of knowing that you can work in a fast-paced environment, that you have the ability to motivate, train, and you're doing it while you're working. So multitasking. And so that's the thing that you're telling. So in every statement, you're telling a little bit of a story about what you did, and it paints that picture. So it just gives me a lot more information about your role really quickly. So that's why you want to just write it just a little bit differently. It'll be really helpful for you. Now, I'll hang on to my slides. I might have jumped ahead on you. Where are we at? And I totally jumped ahead. Okay, sorry guys, I got my notes. So we'll go now the headings, which is what I thought we were at. So the headings and the references standing out. So this part again is coming down to the company and the research that you did. So it's looking at that job posting. Did they use the word education or academic credentials? Did they say, give us your summary of skills or highlight your qualifications? Did they talk about work experience, volunteer, community involvement? So this is where you look at that job posting and you find their keywords and what is that language that they're using. And then that's what I would switch it to. So for example, let's say on my resume, I had volunteer experience, and then I looked at the job posting and they say like, what, tell us about your community involvement. Then all I'm going to do is change my volunteer experience to community involvement. And that way it jumps out at them quickly because again, they're familiar with that language and it's going to pop out at them. So again, there's no wrong or right in what those headings are. It just depends on that job posting, as well as if you don't have something, don't just create something. Like if they're asking for something, don't just throw one on there. If you don't have a lot of volunteer experience or none, then don't put it on there because it's going to highlight it, right? So it's being very specific to what you have as well. If you have, let's say, lots of work experience and some of it's not relevant, or let's say you did a labor job, what you can also do is on the work experience is put relevant work experience. So what that will tell me as a recruiter is if I see a gap in your employment history, like when they look down the chronology of the years, when you said relevant work experience, then I know that you've taken something off of there. And then if I want to come back at the interview, I can ask you like, okay, so what did you do in this time period? But again, it's not relevant to the job, so you don't need to put it on there. So it just making sure you title it that way is really helpful. As well as you can put your professional development and training. Now, again, with that one, I just caution you, don't put everything that you've done. Like I know so many of you have passions and all these hobbies. And again, but what are those ones that would be important for this employer to know? Because if you put everything, then the important things might get lost there. So this is where you want to be very intentional in what you're putting in there. Another thing that's important, and like we talked about the LinkedIn URL, why that's important is because LinkedIn can work as your CV. Like a CV is where you're putting all your publications, research. Basically, it is the whole chronology of you if you want it to be. And that's what your LinkedIn profile can be. You can put all of that stuff in there. And then that way, if the employer wants to do that deeper dive, they'll go to your LinkedIn and they'll see blog posts that you wrote or papers that you wrote, stuff like that. So definitely use your LinkedIn to house as much information that you want somebody to know about you professionally, and then make sure your resume is succinct and tight and relevant to the job posting. Now we've done that one, so we can jump ahead. So that's kind of the resumes in a very tight, condensed version. Now we're going to hop into the cover letter. And I know one of the big questions we get a lot is like, well, are they important? Are they relevant? Does anyone actually read it? And to be honest, it's mixed. Some employers will say 100%, absolutely. Some will say no. So erring on the side of caution, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Because what a cover letter actually helps you do is weave and connect yourself to that position. And it allows your personality to come out. Plus, it allows them to see your written communication skills. So if that's one of the skills that they're looking for, the best way to demonstrate your strength in communication, written communication skills is your cover letter. So keeping that in mind, that's really what this cover letter is representing. It is putting your communication style to them ahead of time. In most cases, what an employer will do is they will read the resume first. They will short down, because what they're going to look for is, do you meet the minimum qualifications like education, basic experience, and they're going to put your resume into that pile. Then what they're going to do is now they're going to go back and they're going to read it from cover letter right through, and they're going to spend a lot more time than the 6 seconds with it. So this is where that cover letter really becomes important, because it really can help you set yourself apart from any other people that might have made that short list pile. Because again, they only have so many interviews they're giving out. And cover letters, honestly, if you put the time in and you connected and you did that research and you can answer the questions about why you want this job, they can really, really set you apart. So with respect to format, this is an outdated picture that they've got on there, but because again, like I said, you wouldn't put your box number, you wouldn't put your street, you're really just going to put the same kind of information at the top under your name as you did on your resume. And the same thing with the company. You don't need to put their street, their address, all that stuff. You would put, if you have the hiring manager's information, you're going to put that in there. You're going to put in their position. If you have that, you can put the city where it is. The most important line is going to be actually the ray line. And I'm going to show you, because I just realized I didn't move my thing ahead. So on this cover letter, so where the ray, the job number, the posting, and you do want to bold that, because what'll happen is if your resume got printed off and they're in the wrong pile, right away that will pop off. So this is when I talked about importance of bolding. This will pop off and they can now share it with the right file, because I've had it where sometimes they've got many competitions going on and it gets on the wrong file. So that is really, really important. And if you're emailing it directly to a recruiter, that's what you want to put in the email. Is you, for the subject, is you put the position and the job number, because again, then they can electronically put it into the correct file to make sure it's there. So that's what you put in the email line. So now with respect to the cover letter, and like I said, it's an important document when they come down to doing that final decision about who they're going to shortlist down to interview. So that first paragraph, and that's what I say, think of it as you're writing an essay. So it's that opening paragraph. So what are you wanting to do? So you want to ask yourself, why do I want to work for this company? Why do I want this position? And what are the skills that I can offer and contribute to this organization? So you really want to connect you to the role. And remember, every word counts. So you've put the job posting name description at the top. So you don't have to say, I'm excited to apply for this position, because that takes a whole line. Jump right in. This is why I'm excited to work with this organization. I saw this opportunity on your website. I saw this. And you weave in the information that you got from the researching and the position, and then you connect yourself to it. And then I would even end it with something, and I'm enthusiastic to come and be a part of your team. And then you full stop that paragraph. Then you go into this body of the paragraph, which is about 2 paragraphs. And in this main body, what you're going to do is take your top 2 or 3 most relevant skills that apply to this position, and you're going to highlight it, and you're going to talk into what it is that you have and bring to this role. And this is where, again, you're just going a little bit a deeper dive. So remember, if you've talked about it and touched on it in the resume, which you probably did, don't repeat absolutely everything again in here. Take the opportunity to take what you said on the resume and give them a little bit more information on it. But again, you don't want to give them absolutely everything. You're giving them the highlight reel, that executive summary, because you want them to want to know more about it and say, wow, I wonder really what they did or how they achieved that. I want to bring them in for an interview. I want to learn more about how they accomplish that. This is where you're wanting to get them wanting to meet you. And then in the closing paragraph, again, you're kind of bringing it everything together and how you started that first paragraph, winding it down, summarizing those core competencies that you have. And then you want to invite them to call, do a call of action. You want them to call you. So instead of just thank you for my consideration, it's like, I look forward to having the conversation. I really want to go deeper into explaining how I can make, these improvements with your company or whatever that is. You can go there, be bold, ask for the interview. Because again, remember, they're looking for people that are going to be able to influence and impact in their organization. And that's all you need to do is just ask for the interview. So that's how I would kind of go with the cover letters. So now we're going to go back and some just writing tips. And this is where one is I highly, highly recommend before we even get into stuff is you need to have someone proofread. It's just so important because once you've worked with your documents so much, like you've probably seen at university in your papers, you just start filling in the gaps. So please always have someone take another look. We have career educators here. You can set up an appointment. You can come to our drop-in sessions and we'll look over your resumes. We'll help you set this stuff up. So that is the nice thing on campus. You have access to some amazing resources that can help you. If you need help with the writing because of language barriers and stuff like that, the university's library service, they will help you with your writing specifically. If it's about resume formatting, you come and see us at Career Services. So I just want to make sure I share that with you. So what you're needing to do is remember, like I said, we're going to just recap, is customizing your cover letter and resume. So important. In all honesty, if you're not going to customize the cover letter, you're probably better off not putting one because it's going to stand out. Employers can easily see too many resumes and cover letters that they know if you haven't customized it. They'll know if it's just a standardized letter. So if you're going to do it, like I said, quality over quantity, don't do the generic thing because they'll know that you're just throwing stuff out and they won't think you're serious about the position. And here's the thing to keep in mind. There's always at least one or two people that really, really, really want that job, that they go the distance and they customize it. And those are the ones that set themselves apart. So if this is a company, this is a job that you want, it is important for you, if you really want to get it, to do that deeper dive. So you want to, and like I said, making sure language, changing some words. So if they talk about time management versus organizational skills, just playing with those little things makes the world of difference in terms of having those words pop off the page. So we've come to just about the end and we'll open it up for some Q&A. Now, personal inventory. I think I've said it enough, but it's so important. At the Career Services, we have different assessments that we can help you with. There's the Clifton Strengths is one of the big ones. It's one of my faves. And the reason I love that one is because it really articulates kind of, I would say, your innate gifts, your superpowers, the ones that are really hard to talk about and the ones that really do make uniquely you and set you apart from everybody else. So I do highly recommend, if you haven't done that, that you do come and see one of our career educators around that, because it gives you the words to really explain it. Or the other thing is you can reach out to your friends, people that know you well, and just say, hey, what is it that you see that I do well? And I know sometimes a bit bold to ask, but it's kind of like, why are you friends with me? What is it that sets me apart? And you know what? It's amazing. I did this as part of one course I was in, and it was kind of vulnerable. You had to put yourself out there, but I was so touched. And my friends were so excited to share that. And it really was a powerful thing. And I still kept them because I'll go back to that list, because sometimes we just don't appreciate those innate superpower gifts that make us uniquely ourselves. So there's a couple of options there that I highly recommend you look at doing. Job postings, definitely play with some of them, look at different industries. So if you're not ready to take that dive yet, do some research around the industry, try to stay away from just one company, explore the industry, see what's going on. Are they going to grow, expand? Where are they going to go? And we do have our Fall Careers Day coming up, and that's the purpose. September 28th is to come and talk to industry leaders, come talk to hiring managers. And it's not about finding a job. It's really about trying to start the conversation, to learn about the companies, the cultures, the workplace, the leadership style. All those are important because when you're starting out in a career, you want to make sure that you're going to have strong mentorship and leaders, because that's going to set your foundation so you can grow and expand your career, and it can really take you a lot farther faster. So this is that job posting and researching those companies, so important. Resume, cover letters, like I said, we can help you with that. If you pull together the information online, we have some guides and templates that can help support you with that. The headings and stuff like that, again, we have it in our guides. We can help you with that. You can pick and choose what you want to go with, what feels comfortable for you. And then the writing tips is definitely getting comfortable with their style and very succinct, using action words. Putting your tasks into something that's quantifiable and putting the quality is going to set you apart a lot from a lot of other people. So that has come to the end. So if you remember the scale from the beginning, we're now like that 1 to 10. Where are you? Has your number gone up? Hopefully it hasn't gone down. Have we moved the needle 1 or 2 points up? So if you wouldn't mind putting that into the chat, that would be wonderful. And I'm gonna unshare my screen now. And we can have a look to see where the dial is. And I can answer some questions.
Couple of 6s and 7s coming in, an 8. Well, Adrian stayed at 8.
I knew that was going to be a hard one. We probably have to go deeper.
I think that's awesome. Yeah.
Sorry,
well,
I'm an older candidate. That's why.
that makes sense. It's not your first time around then. I understand.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I won't personalize that one.
No, but I agree with you that, personalizing, and if I could use a personal example, I'm one of those who applied to 5 jobs, on each of them working between 2 to 3 days. Cover letter I call the love letter. I research the guys, the people individually on LinkedIn. I know where they traveled. If I traveled in the same area and I would be invited in an interview, I would know what to say. So it's all about expressing your love to that job and that company. So if you don't do that, as you say, the other extreme example would be IT people who blast an email, 300 applications, 2 answers, 0 invitations to an interview. I do 5, I get 3 answers and 2 invitations to an interview, and I say, listen, I think I'm probably 100%. You got 1, I got 2 out of 5. You got 1 out of 300. You tell me.
Yeah. And you know what, that probably feels so much more like your self-confidence, right? Because there is something, even if you throw it out there and you didn't do a quality job of the 300, but to not hear,
that 300
it's not good for you.
Yeah. That 300 is not done through any effort. So no, customization whatsoever. But that depends also on the job, right? So I apply for management jobs. And I graduated from a business program. So this is key. I tell a lot of people, you sell personality more than you sell technical skills sometimes. So you have it or you don't. Marketing people should not apply to marketing jobs if they don't have something in their DNA that is marketing related, because then they're going to fail in the workplace, right? So you're going to get that job. You're going to keep it 48 hours. That's it. You go home. Anyhow, sorry.
No, those are great.
That's why I put an 8 there, not to brag or anything.
No, but Adrian, like, you've hit the point, because of course we can sit here and say to do that, but you're right. It makes that difference, and you nailed it. It's about the relationship. It's the connection, and it is being mindful. Like, they can teach you technical skills. Like, if you don't have the internal, like a lot of times, like the software, it's like, do you know this software? It's like, well, you can learn that, right? Like, if you have the aptitude to learn software.
Well, Dawn, some softwares you learn them in 3 to 4 years, but that's a different story, right? So
we're thinking more like University of Saskatchewan uses Cascade to build the website. If you've built websites and other stuff,
You
you
can
can
do
learn
it.
Cascade
Exactly.
pretty
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
Like, that
Exactly.
kind of basic stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Python programming, no, that's that's a
Oh,
lifelong
yeah,
skill.
that's program. That's a whole other world. Yeah, that's why
I'm
we have specific.
I'm from Ottawa, and a lot of people work in cryptology, right? So
Oh,
RCMP, these kind of people, this is brain-racking solutions to advanced mathematical. So it's a different kind of programming depending on what applications you're working on. That's why I was saying that you can learn something in 3 years, 4 years, or 10 years, depending.
And it takes a long
yeah.
time. Don, I really like what Adrian had to say though about creating that connection. And sometimes you can create a connection into the job. Like you're reading a job and you're reading a description, and you're sitting down and you're going to craft your cover letter. And I
Yeah.
know something that I've done that actually works quite well is that I will tell a story of something from my own life that really connects in with that particular position. And I'll use my current position as an example. In my cover letter, I wrote a story about a research experience that I had as an undergraduate student. And it still was only 2 or 3 sentences. Like, it's not like it took, pages and pages, but it was just 2 or 3 sentences to show that I really understood what it meant to be an undergraduate student, what it meant to be an undergraduate student conducting research, and how that had an effect on me and how I still carry that forward. And by doing that,
Mhm.
I rose to the top of the pile when it came to my particular position, which is as the coordinator for undergraduate research here at the University of Saskatchewan, because I relayed this story. And so sometimes when people sit down to write a cover letter, they will wonder what sorts of things, to put in there. I have a
Yeah.
background in storytelling, so so it works for me. It won't necessarily
Yeah.
work for everyone, but it's one suggestion.
But no, and that's brilliant, because the thing is, even if you look at storytelling, and I think we all do it, it's just different degrees. But if you look at especially our indigenous cultures and stuff, how they've passed wisdom and knowledge is all through story. And how, like, children, your story time, like we hear story differently than we do stats and facts, and right. And so that's it. If you can make that connection, and that's why when you research, and like Adrian said, and I love it because I know LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn, and yes, well, I guess now someone is telling me you can now turn off so that everybody cannot see you if you don't want to be seen. But I don't think there's anything wrong if you're researching a company and they see that you went and researched them. I think that's awesome, because you're doing that deep dive. They're going to research you. So that's okay. Go find out their information, get into their heads, so to speak, and then use that when you're creating the cover letter, because the cover letter really does allow your personality to shine if you are, take that time. But like Adrian said, 2 to 3 days to apply for a job. But it is worth it, because like how he said, it shifts from being, just a resume to getting the interview. And it's powerful.
And that's where we want to go. Don, I'm going to allow people to continue asking questions, but at this time I am going to stop the recording. Carol has a question coming in. We write and research a lot. Can you give any more examples on how we can quantify some of our editing and writing? So research papers, managing our research, if you can. What are the words that we should be using to translate those skills onto the paper?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And part of it is going to be depending on that job posting, like what they're looking for. But let's say they're looking for project management. Okay, so they want someone that can do project management. Well, research papers, and doing a lot of the research, it is project management. It is a large project that you're doing. So it's just breaking it down. And then this is where some of the guides that we have on our site, you can break it down, and you can use the word research XYZ, or spent this in deep dive, or what this, right? And so you're really breaking it down into its smaller pieces. And again, that job posting, what part is it? Is it presenting the research? Is it convincing, a board of it? Well, okay, so you know what? I had to go and challenge my, my master's, my PhD. So talk about that. Like, I haven't done that, but I've heard the intensity of it. And you know what? A lot of employers don't understand what goes in to having to go and defend your thesis and stuff. So that in itself is a huge skill set, because it's like, if you can stand in front of a board to do that, Now going and standing in front of your council or executive or shareholders, like you've been there, done that. So it really is pulling out that information. And some of those action words will be on that job posting. And so that's where you can just plunk it. If it's a delegation, coordinated, research, wrote, like this is where you want to use their words. Because like when I said, when they're reading down the spine of the left-hand side, those words are popping out and then they stop and they look and they'll read that sentence. And you want to make sure it's bullet points, not paragraphs, not long. You can have it 2 or 3 lines, but very succinct and reading into that.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So look at the job description, absolutely, and parrot it back in innovative ways.
Yeah, exactly. You know, just take the line and read it. And this is the other part is, so often I'll see they'll research the website. It's like, well, they have to know I read the website. So they'll like, yeah, on your website, and they'll read back stats. And I was like, no, don't do that. Weave it, take the information off the website, weave it in and connect it, because they're going to see, oh, they read the strategic report. They know what our challenges are. They know what problems we're trying to achieve. That's where that comes. And they're like, oh, because remember, it's your written communication. So how do you influence? How do you attract people? And like Mira, like you said, when you tell that story, if they're looking for somebody that can influence, connect, draw them in, and communication skills, that's where the power comes with that cover letter.
That's brilliant. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to stop the recording but I will keep the session open and you can continue firing questions in Dawn's direction. But Dawn, thank you very much for a very informative and very positive and energetic overview of what we should be doing to apply for our next job.
Great, my pleasure.